In this problem, we have two cars headed in the same direction on the highway. The trailing car is moving a little faster than the car out front. They both have the same mass. And after the collision, the trailing car is now going the velocity that the lead car had before. We're asked to calculate whether the collision is elastic, which means we're going to have to know the velocity of the lead car after the collision. So let's put everything together. So before the collision, the momentum is m1 v1 plus m2 v2. After the collision, the momentum is m1 v1 prime, pardon me, plus m2 v2 prime. And we know everything in this equation except for v2 prime. So if we solve for v2 prime, all right, I'm going to cut and paste, hopefully with some success. Minus m1 v1 prime. All right, so now we have almost solved for v2 prime. We can just divide both sides by m2, okay, parentheses, copy all of that, paste it in, divide by m2. So now I've divided through by m2, we have an equation for v2 prime. Now, delta ke, to find out if this is elastic, is going to be ke prime minus ke. So ke, we have to calculate 1/2 m1 v1 squared plus 1/2 m2 v2 squared. And then ke prime is going to be 1/2 m1 v1 prime squared plus 1/2 m2 v2 prime squared. And we need to calculate delta ke, which is just ke prime, kinetic energy after the collision, minus kinetic energy before the collision. So now we work through everything we need to do. We have v2 prime. We figured out what that was. We can calculate the kinetic energies now and take their difference. So let's go over and start putting in the data. v1, m2, v2, v1 prime. So Vm1 is 1261 kilograms. V1 14.2. M2 is 1261 kilograms. And V2 is 12.9 meters per second. Now V1 prime, 12.9 meters per second. So what is V2 prime? Need the parentheses because it's M1 times V1 plus M2 times V2 minus M1 times, I missed that, minus M1 times V1 prime. Let me get rid of my typo. Times V1 prime. All of that divided by M2. So now we have V2 prime is 14.2, which is exactly what V1 prime was beforehand. Maybe you can already see where this is going. So KE is 0.5 times M1 times V1 squared plus 0.5 times M2 times V2 squared. KE prime is going to be 0.5 times M1 times V1 prime squared plus 0.5 times M2 times V2 prime squared. And look at that. They are equal, and so we can go and calculate delta KE is KE prime minus KE. We get 0. This was an elastic collision. And what you're going to enter into this for the answer is this 0 joules of energy.